and welcome back to Coffee with Craig. I am your host, Craig DeLuz, and I'm here to talk to you today about firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can participate in the conversation as it's taking place. Also, make sure you hit that notification button if you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook. That way you'll get the notification as soon as these videos go live. So, that's the place to be if you want to see them first. So make sure that you guys go ahead and you do that. Also, want to encourage you, please take a moment and visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. Folks, it is the place to find all of your cool Pro 2A swag. Folks, these are t-shirts that not only look good, but they got a message. They have a message that says, I support the Second Amendment. So, if you want to support the Second Amendment and you want to look good doing it, fpcgear.com, that is the place to go. Folks, it is a pleasure being back with you. It seems like forever since we've had the opportunity to have these conversations. I mean, me and my, Californicated AR here, we have missed y'all, but hey, we're back and we're excited to be here with you. We're also excited for what we're going to be talking about today. And that has to do with a big win that we've had here in my home state of California, which deals with the idea that, once you're an adult, you're an adult. That at 18, we figure if we can send you off to a foreign country and put a fully automatic weapon in your hand and tell you to go and defend our interests abroad, well, guess what? You ought to be able to own or possess a firearm in order to be able to defend your own interests here in the United States or here in California in your own home. Unfortunately, many of the politicians in the state of California didn't believe that that was the case. And luckily, according to the Ninth Circuit, a district judge and then the Ninth Circuit, they would happen to be wrong. And to discuss this victory and where things are headed with this particular case, we have the Associate Counsel for the Firearms Policy Coalition, Mr. Bill Sack, with us today. All right. Bill, welcome to the program.
Craig, thank you for having me. This is like worlds collide here.
Well, it's weird. And so, folks, for those of you who don't know, this is the first time we've actually had a chance to meet. But I watch Bill all the time on Facebook and on YouTube. So Bill, I feel like I already know you.
And Coffee with Craig is like on all of my playlists on my YouTube.
Hey, it's funny the way that happens. But I find that the number of people who really understand firearms and firearm policy are few and far in between. And oh, by the way, also happen to be entertaining. So when I find them, I make sure to bookmark them.
Amen to that. Happy to be here.
All right. So, hey, all right. Do me a favor. Tell us a little bit about Jones and this particular case, Jones v. Bonta. It's hard for me to say Bonta without throwing up in my mouth a little bit. But tell us a little bit about this case.
So this was a big win that we got a couple weeks ago in mid-May. So Jones v. Bonta is a case that just came out of the Ninth Circuit in California. A 3-judge panel opinion came down. And what the case really is about is the fact that California, amongst the dozens of other firearms restrictions that we're all familiar with, restricts the ability of young adults between 18 and 21 from buying semi-automatic rifles. So it's an age-based ban, and we filed a case earlier in the year challenging the constitutionality of that, saying that essentially 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds have the constitutional rights that any other peaceable American has. And violating their rights purely based on their age is unconstitutional under the Second and 14th Amendment. And just in mid-May, a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit agreed with us.
Okay. So what sort of rationale, first of all, did the state have for saying that, we should violate the rights of adults who, by the way, in every other way are both legally and criminally responsible for the decisions that they make. What sort of logic did they make that they believe makes this okay to discriminate against these adults?
So the problem is that the government, and not just the state of California, but lots of different governments, including the federal governments, like to play ticky-tack games and kind of hide the ball when it comes to age-based restrictions. They like to be all over the place and incredibly inconsistent insofar as, they believe that at the age of 18, which is the age of majority in this country, you're free to join the military, you're free to enter into contracts, you're free to get married, you are free to do any other number of things, including being tried as an adult if you commit any crimes. But the state of California and many other jurisdictions like to say that, well, despite all of those things and the way that you're considered an adult under the law at age 18, we don't think you have a fully formed, rational, judgment processing brain yet that makes you capable of possessing firearms.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, these are the same people who want to lower the voting age to 16. These
right.
are the
they
same. They
like to have it both ways.
Right. They want to have it both ways. You can't. Yeah. It makes absolutely no sense. So what were some of the rationalizations? What are some of the things that the judges said when they struck down this particular law?
So there are a couple key things about the opinion that I want to point out because I think they're important, not just for this law, but also for kind of Second Amendment analysis more broadly. The big thing that the judges on the panel pointed out was that the core right to be able to keep and bear arms has an ancillary and necessary predicate right, which is the right to be able to acquire arms. So you can't keep and bear arms if you can't purchase them. And that's really what the ban at stake in Jones v. Bonta is all about, is it's prohibiting not the possession of these arms, but the fact that young adults in California can't go out and buy them. So the important thing is that the judges said, look, if you have the right to keep and bear something, and you have the right to be able to use it in lawful self-defense, you have to be able to get it first. So that it was an important first step. Now, the second thing that I think is important is to kind of consider what we call the procedural posture in the legal world, which is, how did this case, where along in the lawsuit is this case, and what grounds did the court use to come to the decision? So in terms of the posture, we asked for a preliminary injunction at the district court level, and the district court said, no, you lose. No preliminary injunction is necessary here. And a preliminary injunction is basically saying to the court, like, hey, court, we think that this law is so detrimental and so injurious to the constitutional rights of our members and of our plaintiffs that we think you need to stop its enforcement right now. And the district court basically said, kick rocks. And what they did was they applied a very watered down standard that has become really commonplace, especially in the Ninth Circuit. And it's a watered down version of intermediate scrutiny. And basically, under this watered down version of intermediate scrutiny that the Ninth Circuit has taken to using, basically the government gets a free pass on any gun control that they want. All they have to do is say the magic words of public safety, and the court says, that's good enough for us, any gun control is fine. Well, this three-judge panel in the Ninth did, which is notable, is they said, no, this ban is so pernicious, it's so broad, and because semi-automatic rifles strike so deeply to the core of these young adult Second Amendment rights that we're going to apply strict scrutiny. And that's the highest level of scrutiny. And that basically means that the government is being held to a higher standard in order for that law to pass. And so applying that higher standard, the court here said, California, you have not met this high standard. And in fact, they even said that under a proper version of intermediate scrutiny, the law still should be knocked out. So notable that that we got the win here in the Ninth Circuit, and especially that the judges said that strict scrutiny is the right level of scrutiny to apply.
Well, it's interesting, and I have long lamented or just been angry about how the Second Amendment has largely been treated by the judiciary as a redheaded stepchild.
Yeah,
How they've said they're using intermediate scrutiny, but they're really using rational basis. And rational
essentially.
basis, even to the point, and for those of you who don't know, rational basis just means if there's any compelling reason that the government has, the law is constitutional. And what makes it worse is the people who are defending the government doesn't even have to be the one that comes up with it. Even if the judge makes up in his own mind that there's a good reason in their mind, whether they know, by the way, anything about guns or not, if they make it up in their mind that it's acceptable, well then, boom, that's it. So getting strict scrutiny is a huge deal. And if you get, what would happen in many cases? And give me example. Do you have any examples of cases where if we actually got strict scrutiny, we might actually see some cases decided differently?
So yeah, that's a great question. So to take just a quick step back and fill
Okay.
in our listeners so they know kind of what it is that we're talking about, I think it's worth explaining. So under constitutional analysis, when courts are looking at whether a particular law passes constitutional muster, there are three different levels of scrutiny that the court can apply, and in some instances must apply, depending on the types of law that's at issue. Rational basis is the lowest level, and pretty much at the rational basis standard, the government always wins. It's like a thumb on the scale for the government. As long as they can put forward any sort of reasonable connection between the law that they have put in place and some rational connection to something good that they claim that they're doing with it, it passes. At the intermediate level, at intermediate scrutiny, they have to show that there's a compelling state interest. So that's a stronger state interest that they have to show. And they have to show that it's reasonably related to that state interest, to that compelling state interest. But importantly, Craig, they have to show that there's some level of tailoring there. And tailoring means that they are not prohibiting or regulating or chilling more conduct, in this case, more firearms related or 2A related conduct than is necessary. And then at the highest level, at the strict scrutiny level, they have to show that it's an important state interest and that it is now narrowly tailored to suit that interest. So they have to show that the governmental interest that they are pursuing is even more important, and that the law that they have in place really targets just the negative conduct that it is that they're trying to fix. So, as gun owners, we're constantly familiar with this idea that it's us law-abiding gun owners that get placed under the regulations, and we're the ones that actually get affected by gun control. It doesn't affect the criminals who, conveniently enough, don't follow laws, but we end up with them. So the higher the level of scrutiny that's applied to the case, the more likely it is the government loses, because they're held to a higher standard. So getting strict scrutiny applied is very important, and it will lead to the likelihood of success on the merits in lots of other cases.
Well, let me ask you this now. Also, under strict scrutiny, don't they have to show that there aren't less restrictive or other avenues that could be used that are less restricting of our rights? Correct?
Yes, and that's something that the government's actually required to show under intermediate scrutiny as well, is they're required to show that they considered less restrictive alternative means, which means that they thought about, like, okay, instead of banning all 18 to 20-year-olds from purchasing any semi-automatic rifle ever in California, maybe there's a more limited version of some restriction that actually speaks more directly to preventing crime and increasing public safety, and not just infringing on the rights on hundreds of thousands of young people in California. So, one of the things that's interesting that comes up often in these sorts of cases, in particular in the age-based cases, is we look at the statistics behind the individuals that are being affected by this law. And, yes, to a certain degree, it's true that young people make up a small but disproportionately larger amount of violent crime than older folks. The fact is, younger people, to a certain degree, and statistically not all that big, are more likely to commit violent crime, or people that commit violent crime are more likely to be young as opposed to old, right? But we're still talking about tiny, tiny percentages. Something to the effect of 0.25% of people aged 19, 20, or 21 ever commit any violent crime. 0.25%. So that means, in the name of restricting 0.25% of that population, which might commit a crime at some point, the other 99.75% are being banned from being able to protect themselves. And it's that sort of lack of tailoring, or lack of reasonable restriction on what the regulation actually is, that should be absolutely fatal to all of these gun control regulations. And when intermediate or strict scrutiny are applied properly, they are.
Well, exactly. So, in other words, a majority of, or a disproportionate, or large portion of crimes involving firearms are committed by young people, but not a large percentage of young people commit crimes of firearms. And
Exactly.
exactly. Well, and that's the thing is that, once again, it's almost like you want to look at them and realize, look, okay, they realize they're trying to do something, and I get what they're trying to do, but the problem is that they're going about it, and one of the ways they're doing it is they're going after, and we're just going to make sure all law-abiding citizens' rights are restricted. I always say, they always use that thing. They always say, no right is absolute, and they always use the example, the not yelling fire in a crowded theater. And I always tell them, I said, well, actually, you can yell fire in a crowded theater, but more importantly, what we don't do is we don't put tape on people's mouths before they walk into the theater, in the event that a small percentage of people, that one person, may actually cause harm to others by abusing their rights. And by the way, we also have both criminal and civil laws in place that if you yell fire in a theater and someone gets injured and there's no fire or something like that, that you can be held accountable. We have the same thing, by the way, with guns.
Yeah, turns out murder and aggravated assault are already crimes. And to be clear, since you brought it up, rights absolutely are absolute.
Yes.
In particular, the one that says shall not be infringed is absolute and is not negotiable hard stop. So we're clear.
I always wonder, because I always look at it and I'm like, okay, what part of, shall not is not absolute?
Well, there are certain elements in the political structures in this country that believe that the Constitution is prone to interpretation on a whim, and based on whatever the commonly held belief or politically advantageous or opportunist issue of the day might be, for sake of getting themselves and the other people with their initial and with the same initial in front of their name elected in the next news cycle. We're not those people, and we're not that group. And as I like to say here, who wins in every election? The government. And that means not us.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So where does the case go from here?
So good question. So as we've seen quite frequently, and in fact every time, the Third Circuit or the Ninth Circuit puts out a 3-judge panel, in particular that's pro Second Amendment and in support of gun rights, is we see that the entirety of the Ninth Circuit, which is called the Ninth Circuit en banc, steps in and takes the case and rehears it. So we do not at this point know that is going to happen, although we strongly suspect it's going to happen. So that can happen either because the state appeals and requests that the Ninth Circuit take another look at the case. And basically what they're asking for by asking for another look is they're saying, hey, if we get a larger panel with more judges, maybe more of you will agree with us, and then we win. Or the Ninth Circuit can choose to take it up en banc, what we call sua sponte, which means on their own, from the Latin spontaneous, where the Ninth Circuit can say like, oh, geez, like we're really not comfortable with a pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment opinion coming out of our circuit. The 3 judges that took this on in the first place, we think they got it wrong, so we're going to fix it for them. So that's what we anticipate happening. We would love if that didn't happen and this opinion stood. But at this point, we think that it's a good bet that the rest of the judges in the Ninth Circuit are going to step in, and we'll see an 11-judge panel reconsider the case.
It's funny though how that always happens. If we win in a 3-judge panel, then they get on. They all of a sudden the case is worthy of review en banc. But if we lose, well, then no, it doesn't need to be reviewed. I just the coincidence, the just is astounding.
The redheaded stepchild of the Bill of Rights, Craig. You know where we fit.
There you go. All right, Bill, how do folks follow the legal work of the Firearms Policy Coalition?
Great question. Firearmspolicy.org takes you to our main site. If you want to go directly to the legal page, you can always go to fpclegal.org. Every case that we're involved in, whether it be taking lead in the litigation, in a supporting role in filing amicus briefs, or participating in any other capacity, everything gets listed there. We have full transparency to all of our members and the public as to every case that we're involved in. We post all of the briefing in their entirety for free. And we encourage people to check out our work.
Excellent, sir. Excellent. So now, before I let you go, I had let some of my friends know, some of my social media friends know that coffee was coming back and my first guest was going to be Bill Sack. And multiple times I was asked, okay, you got to ask him, what gun does he have on his desk? What's he carrying today?
Well, you can't be a gun lawyer if you don't have a couple guns on your desk. So today I'm being bougie and I have my Staccato XC on my desk because it's just the best gun to play with all day when you're trying to answer emails and do interviews on YouTube.
Very nice, very nice. I guess one has to be a very successful gun lawyer to be able to get one of, well, at least one that's not in California to be able to get one of those. Very nice.
Yeah, and like trade in all of his other guns for it. It was so worth it.
Very nice, very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bill Sack.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, folks. Well, hey, that's going to be it for this episode of Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking, and we appreciate you sharing the program. Folks, we can't do this without you, so please support FPC as they support your right to keep and bear arms. Remember, this is a fight for our civil rights. Got to use them, or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.